United Kingdom, there's one big thing that we all enjoy, well, particularly if it's a treat. We're talking about the splendid afternoon tea. And in fact, it's all down to royalty why we enjoy afternoon tea so much. I know a lot of the chums who watch this show, and of course our wonderful friendship group, would all love an English afternoon tea. The scones, the jam, the cream, the pastries, the sandwiches. And it's amazing when you think about it because, as I say, this really started out late Georgian, but absolutely took off during the Victorian era. Now, the reason for afternoon tea, I don't know if you know this, was simply because they had so many big meals. Well, Queen Victoria wasn't a big eater as much as you might have thought, but she liked a lot of choice. So at breakfast, for instance, you might have to have haddock, eggs, cold meats, toast, porridge. She didn't necessarily eat it all, but as apparently she was said, she just liked to have that choice. Lunch might be very small as well. Of course, afternoon tea was a piece de resistance. This was, of course, the likes of the scones and the jam and all that sort of stuff. The reason being is this fueled you up while you had a late royal dinner, somewhere between 8:30 and 9 p.m. at night. You get the picture. Now, when you think about our brilliant king today, King Charles, only recently has he had to start taking lunch, all thanks to the medication that he's taking for, of course, his current health problems. But Queen Victoria basically loved her afternoon tea so much, well, this resulted in her absolutely passing a bill that was all to do with the royal, well, household. As ever, let me explain. So in 1894, you can imagine this, can't you? Queen Victoria's heading her way back after a private meeting in the centre of London back to Buckingham Palace, just ahead of the much anticipated afternoon tea. Feeling a little bit peckish, you can imagine how this is going to play out. She arrived, as we now know, as Horse Guards Parade, home of the Household Cavalry. And as you can see, it's still resplendent today and draws in thousands of people every year to get pictured with the Household Cavalry horses. We've told you before, of course, about how people try to spook the horses and then they either turn around, kick them and all that sort of stuff. But it's all for camera clicks. Way back then, of course, there were no such things as smartphones. It was all about the arrival of our city monarch. And this is what happened. Formerly known as Punishment Parade, the tradition of the 4 o'clock inspection literally began in 1894. Queen Victoria arrived at Horse Guards, expecting to find the Household Cavalry ready and waiting to escort her back to Buckingham Palace for her afternoon tea, only to find that the guards were either asleep, worse than that drunk, or even worse than that gambling on the job. Queen Victoria was not amused and commanded that for the next 100 years, the guards be inspected every single day at 4 p.m. to ensure that they were taking their duty seriously. And by 1894, this became literally, well, the rule. The century of punishment, as it was technically known, ended in 1994. But our wonderful late Queen Elizabeth II ordered the Household Cavalry to carry on indefinitely as a regimental tradition, one that continues to this day. So by default, Queen Victoria really started out what we now know to be a wonderful tourist trap. And this was all really to do with the fact that she enjoyed another English tradition, English afternoon tea. Now, one can only assume how this planned out when she turned up in the carriages to find them asleep, drunk, or indeed gambling. And they had no idea that she was going to come through that particular time. They thought it was going to be later. So, of course, by being a top boss, as they may say, Queen Victoria started a tradition, not only through enjoying a resplendent afternoon break mid-meal before she had a bit of a nap, but of course, making sure that today, even with your smartphone, camera, or simply looking at the spectacle that is the changing and inspection of the guard at 4 p.m, it all remains thanks to the, well, wonderful late Queen Victoria. Neil Sean in the very heart of London.